welcome back to Shit They Don't Tell You. I'm Nikki Limo.
What's up, guys? Crypto King here.
Apologies for last week of us doing a repeat. I was sick.
It was on you.
It was on me.
Nowadays, if you get sick, that's completely your fault.
Well,
So you should take the L. Just take the fucking L and apologize.
I attracted that into my life.
Apologize.
You know? I did. I started it off literally saying, I'm sorry.
Was it enough? It wasn't enough for me.
Dressed up today because I wanted to feel not sick for the first time in a week and a half.
You look fantastic.
Thank
by the
you.
Way. If those of you who are missing out on Nikki on the YouTubes, really is a good episode. Maybe
I've never worn this dress. This was the debut of this dress.
I enjoy it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you look like a politician's wife, and I do not look like a politician.
I kind of felt like that when I put it on. I was like, wow, I look like I could give a speech.
Yeah.
Like I'm
like
doing
a very empty speech.
like a speech where I want people on my side after.
Exactly. It's like you're not taking a stand on really anything, but you look great.
I look polished.
And afterward, everyone's like, you did so good. You look great.
And I did a study that blue is a trustworthy color.
That's right. Because all your polling people who slowly remove all humanity from your personality also betrust at that point.
Yes. Which kind of has something to do with our topic today.
I think
a
so.
little bit.
I think it
kind of like
does. Front-facing personalities.
Yeah. Yes. How do you want to start it? I mean, I feel like it's kind of like Steve and I have been talking about a kind of a mixture of topics that have been bleeding together lately.
Yes.
And have been fodder for fantastic conversation that I wish was recorded.
I do as well.
But then we're like, we should put this on a podcast because it's some shit they don't tell you.
And then we're like, but the batteries aren't charged.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And then my voice went away.
Yeah. And I have to dump all the footage from last week. Hold on.
Yeah.
So it's not just instant over here.
So then we're going to try to recreate those conversations. Probably not going to be as good.
It's just second, third, fourth tier, frankly. No, but truly, I mean, look, this has been kind of a common theme for us lately, especially the past, I would say, maybe for you, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
I would say that, but we've really kind of honed in on like some of the real things that we could do about it within the past probably like 2 months.
Yeah. Well, it started, I feel like, with an unraveling when I went to see a new therapist last year around March, April. Got diagnosed with ADHD and found out I was on the spectrum kind of thing. And
by the way,
dealt with a lot of, you were, I mean, you were one of the catalysts for me to actually take it seriously and go get tested. And I was shocked. Like, I was like, whoa, like not only was I shocked that I went this long, 35 years without knowing that. But I was also shocked that like so much of my life made sense afterwards.
Honestly, not to be too corny, but very thankful for a childhood friend of mine named BJ, who is his name. But he was on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I remember being his friend, and I remember seeing a lot of the things that you do normally in him as well. And I remember not thinking that they were weird at all, but then looking back on those things, you know, quote unquote weird, right? Like what everyone else sees as weird, but like for you, it's just your normal thing.
Right.
And so that's why it's not the same as like just you're a normal person. Like there's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So not putting anybody down, good Lord. But I'm just saying I was able to recognize, I think, a lot of the things that you were doing from the great experience that I had with my childhood best buddy, BJ, which helped me see it.
And do you know that's so funny that you say that, because that's the reason why I was dismissed as not having it. My mom, so my family members, my uncle especially, had been diagnosed with Asperger's, and my mom was like, well, Nikki kind of has some of those things, but not as extreme. Therefore, she must not have it.
Yes.
And not realizing that
you're
it's
not
called
in a plastic bubble, and you're not being walked around by people in white coats. So, but you know what I mean? Like there's a stereotype about that stuff. Not that she was playing into it.
No. She just like, you only know what you know, right? And so the same reason, like when I went to her saying I think I have depression, she was like, well, you're not bipolar. Like you don't have any of these symptoms, so then you must not have depression. And just depression wasn't really talked about or known. Like there was way more of a stigma.
As an excuse.
Yeah,
for a long time,
and there was so much unknown about it. We didn't talk about it as much as we do today, so it was just a stigma. It was very, very much. The older generation thought correlated depression with being crazy, you know, like you're going to see a shrink or whatever. Whereas nowadays we don't really talk about it that way, so which is nice. It's kind of destigmatized. But yeah, so she was like, well, Nikki does a lot of similar things, but not as extremes. Therefore, she must not have it. Anyway, all that to say that like that started this unraveling of really, I guess me wanting to find get to the truth of who I am as a person. Like if you really were to strip all of the mask off, like all of the things that you've been socially conditioned to put on yourself. And this is not just a people on the spectrum thing. This is also just in society. You have a certain level. That even typical people will have of this layer of social conditioning, and what you're trained is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And women even more so, because we're just like, there's a standard for how you're supposed to be as a woman. So I think like from a younger age, girls are taught to mask a lot more than boys are.
Yeah.
Which is why it's actually hard to get diagnosed as an adult female.
Yes.
Because,
which is a more known thing now.
Right.
But it wasn't.
Back then they thought girls didn't have it. And then now women, after like so much later in life, have typically masked so much. Even as a neurotypical person, like you're already wearing so many layers of masking, trying to be accepted by society, that it's hard to tell it's hard to tell who the real you is under there,
Yes.
Anyway, I'm fortunate that I was in a field that it's more of a creative field, and I get to be more of me than I would if I had maybe
it was closer to the surface.
Yeah.
It was more
Whereas
raw.
People working in a 9-to-5 corporate life, you have to fit in or die, Yeah. But it was really interesting to me because there was so many things made sense of like these social interactions that I had no idea what went wrong. And then it comes to the surface that it's like, oh, well, this is because your brain thinks this way and their brain thinks this way. And so you have these false, like both of you think you're assuming the same thing. So it's like false contextualized assumptions. Like someone says something and I assume that they mean one thing. So I say something back, assuming that they understand that I'm responding to that. And then they're like, they take offense to whatever I said because my assumption was not what they were assumed,
Yeah. And you're a little more matter of fact.
Yeah.
Which I love about you. But yeah, like, in the wrong scenario, somebody could take offense to that when you're being matter of fact. And you're like, wait, why wouldn't I be matter of fact?
Right. Like if someone was telling a story and something didn't add up.
Yes,
there's
which you've done to me many times.
And it's like...
You just blow me up in the middle of a story. It doesn't matter if I'm flourishing it to make it a little bit funnier. She'll blow it up in the middle of the fucking story. And I'm like, okay, there's two things that are going on here. Either number one, she's a comedy saboteur who wants all the laughs to herself, and that's the insecure side of me, right?
Yeah.
That was like the very early...
And I didn't get that that's something that people could even assume. Like that was a thing that like, oh, I'm attacking you to make you look bad.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Comedy saboteur so that the laughs are for you.
Yeah.
Oh, let me remove some of that laughs from him, and now it's more about me again. But no, that was not you at all. That's the further thing from you. You are the least selfish person I know.
It's more like you're telling a story and now I can't focus on your story because there was an inaccuracy.
What happened there?
There was an inaccuracy.
We didn't live there. We lived at this place.
No, we actually lived at this.
We didn't live at the funeral home place. We lived at this place. But then it's funnier for Steve's story if we lived at the funeral home place.
I didn't get it because my brain locked on to that inaccuracy and I needed you to know. Not from a place of...
we did live at a funeral home, by the way.
Yeah, we did. But it's like I didn't understand for so long that my brain was like, oh, I would like to be accurate in my storytelling. So if someone points out an inaccuracy, it's thank you for pointing that out so that I could correct my story to be more accurate. I didn't understand that people saw it as me going like, I'm taking the light out of your story.
It's a stupid, honestly, it's part of the great defense of man, right? Where, we're all in a scenario where we're maybe exposing ourselves, being a little more vulnerable than maybe we would like to be. And then someone comes in, and so we assume the worst possible intention behind it as a defense mechanism instead of just like trying to find the humanity in it, which we all do. Good Lord, I do that all the time too. But trying to zoom out a little bit and like reassess and see like the humanity of people's intentions helps me a lot. Hope it helps a lot of people a lot. But yeah, it helped me understand your situation a lot more, especially the more we talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was super uber helpful because now when those situations come up, I have a place that's like, oh, could it be that my brain interpreted what they said as this, but really they thought they were saying that, or to most people, like it's being interpreted as this.
Yes.
And it allows me to like really understand the differences in thought and not get so, I used to get, I still do sometimes get really emotional when I'm misunderstood because
you also mask a lot because you have to, because of what has happened to you in the past. So you revert to people pleasing a lot more than you would like to, just to try to make up for that. You're like, I don't want to be wrong here.
Yeah.
So let me like cover who I am like a little bit here and try to appease you. And so nobody's really winning from this interaction because I'm just appeasing you. And you do this a lot.
Yeah.
But then you're not really being productive with that relationship because you're just appeasing them, and then they're
just hoping they still like me.
Yes. And then so it's just a transactional, like, I hope they like me, and then they're like, oh yeah, Nikki's cool, man. She's like super agreeable to all my viewpoints.
Yeah. And then as my authentic self slowly dies inside.
Dithers away.
Yeah. And then I wonder why I'm so depressed all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there was this unraveling that started last year, and it was super helpful. And I really felt like I was getting in touch to like the raw root of who I am and where my passions are and where I derive happiness from without external sources, right? Like what's the path I'm meant to walk that's like coming from a pure, authentic place.
Yeah, where's your engine at?
Yeah. Without, I want to say if I lived in a vacuum, but part of walking that path would be to share with other people. So it's like but what's not ego based, what is more in alignment with who I am and what I feel is right. And I think that finding that spark that we've talked about before, like the thing that leads you to those feelings of having that spark is your intuition telling you that that's the way that you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
And then we did an episode last year, at the end of last year, when we bought a house here in Vegas, when we were moving to a different state, about the hero's journey and about answering the call, and where everyone gets a call. No one's special in that. Like you're getting a call from the universe or this little voice inside you that's like, hey, I kind of like this direction. I really kind of want to go this way. Makes me happy. I'm feeling like these sparks of joy that I don't feel in my everyday life. I'm over here working my job, being a productive human being, and I'm feeling this like tug that I'm supposed to go this way. Everyone gets those feelings. You don't get to choose when you get those feelings, but it's called getting a call from the universe. And
I don't know anyone who hasn't had that at some point.
Right? I think that,
like my own father, who I thought was the most like rigid, logical thinking person ever, I found out I had a creative side when I was like 23 years old.
Yeah.
Like, random conversation.
Dude, same. With my parents, my parents are both in finance. My dad's a CPA. My mom's a financial controller of a bank, eventually vice president of a bank. So, very like left-brain careers. But it was really surprising when I was like 12, I found all this poetry that my dad wrote. Like he's like super creative.
What a loser.
I found out like he color coordinates all of his closet. He like really has this like creative side. He loves wearing funky socks to work and like hiding them under his dress pants, and that's his like little bit of, I think, creative rebellion coming
it's just
out.
Like clown balloons on socks.
Yeah. Like
for
he
sure.
has this little thing in him that's like rebelling against this non-creative path that he chose.
Yep.
And my mom paints these beautiful watercolor paintings, but doesn't really find time for it anymore. And she like really focused on providing for the kids, and both of them working full-time jobs in these like very left-brain careers, finance, analytical careers. And I didn't find out till later that they were actually really creative people. And I think that a lot of people kind of have these sparks and they just don't think it could be translated into a career. So it's just a silly hobby that they have on the side.
I got to grow up a little bit mentally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, I got to grow up. Honestly, it reminds me, the stuff that we're talking about, I guess I should get to this later, but it did remind me of the movie Hook. Where Peter Pan forgets how to fly because he grew up and he became a lawyer, and lawyers don't fly. Lawyers are very grounded.
Anymore is tragic.
Yeah, and then he like, went through that scene where all of a sudden he could see the food at the feast, and it was all imagination. But I think that that's actually the key. I think imagination, and you as a child using that imagination a lot, is actually the key to where you're supposed to go and the life that you're.
Real quick?
Yeah.
So you're telling people they should pretend to eat invisible food and then think that that's sustenance?
Absolutely. I don't think enough people. I need to end the stigma of not eating invisible food.
So I take a turkey. So here's what Nikki's saying: take a turkey leg, put it to your mouth, chew, and that's going to give you sustenance. People will die from what you just said.
Everybody's like,
how
do we end starvation? I'm telling you, eat imaginary food. I'm telling you right now. Quote me.
That's what she said.
People are going to take that literally.
I know they will.
There's enough people on the spectrum that are going to take that literally. Just put a hashtag sarcasm.
Well, they have they actually have a way better sense of humor than they are perceived to have.
No, it's just a different sense of humor, which Eminem is on the spectrum, and I always related to his humor.
Yeah. Is he confirmed on the spectrum?
He has mentioned it a few times that he has Asperger's.
No
I don't know if it's like, he hasn't been like, I have an official diagnosis, but like, it's pretty obvious to me.
Love it.
But anyway, so we're talking about answering the call, right? And everyone has this call, and you can choose whether to answer the call or not. And most people don't, because it's really scary to answer the call. You're going to go out of your comfort zone, leave everything that you know behind, and go down this path that you don't know where it goes. And it's pretty scary. But I think that both Steve and I have gone through a lot of cycles of answering the call. And I don't know what in us made us want to answer the call more than others. This I've had it since I was little, where I was just like, I would rather go through this unknown of things that feel good, that feel right, than this way that everyone says is the correct way to go, but feels wrong to me. It's like not in alignment with how I feel I should go.
For you, it feels antiquated.
Yeah, and it literally feels wrong.
But that is an attack on some people's way of life, which is wild because you're just talking about yourself.
Right. So I did bring this up. Actually, I didn't bring it up. It got brought up to me
many times
in a recent conversation with somebody who is in a more corporate career path, who is choosing to leave behind, had a quick foray in a creative field, and has decided that actually for them, the better path is the corporate world. They feel more comfortable there.
Which is great.
They thrive there. And I was like super supportive.
That's awesome.
Very happy for them.
Yep.
They're crushing it. And I'm like, couldn't be more happy. But
just because you're talking about like leaving your comfort zone doesn't mean it's comfortable for everybody.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like that it's about like your fit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all I've ever preached to people, is finding something that's in alignment with you, with what feels good to you. The problem was...
But real quick, but it sounds like when you're saying that, like there's this voice and it's like trying to come out, and then we stifle it. But to some people, it sounds like you're saying everybody should just open that voice up and pry it open and see what happens, and like go make that your livelihood. But like that's not what you're saying. You're saying, hey, like listen to it, see what it's about. But that doesn't mean it's like your fucking future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, okay, now we're going off on a couple of different tangents. We'll come back to this story with this friend. But a couple of times on the show, people have misconstrued us saying that there's an alternative path to college as us saying, don't go to college.
Don't go to college anymore.
That's absolutely not what we're saying.
But they'll still hear us saying that.
I know.
We've said it so many times.
We've said it so many times that I'm like, if you see that your career path, what you feel pulled to do,
doesn't align with college.
Requires college. Go to college.
Please go to college.
Absolutely, 1000% go to college. What I'm saying is that there's a whole bunch of people out there right now, and I see it on Twitter all the time. I'm actually following a bunch of random people from back in the day when I did followbacks, and now I'm like following a bunch of people who, when I followed them, they were like 13. I was doing followbacks, and now they're grown-ass adults out like years removed from college, and they're having a really tough time out there, and they feel like, well, one, there's this huge wealth class, that two, they were promised that if they graduated college that they'd have like some sort of job security to pay back their student loan debts, and they got fucked by the system. And I am not saying the system fucks everybody, nor am I saying don't go to college and fuck the system. I'm saying that there is an alternate way. So it should be like a beacon of hope, a light that, like, if this way is not working out for you and you gave it your all, maybe try this other way that, like, maybe if you're getting a voice inside kind of steering you towards a different direction, that, like, see what you have nothing to lose by trying that way. And that's been skewed as us saying, like, don't go to college, when all I'm saying is that college is a very traditional pathway that used to provide a job security, that college tuition was seen as an investment that could be paid back within a couple of years of salary.
It's like the American dream. It's a fucking scam in from an angle.
Yeah.
Right? But from another angle, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go. So what are we talking about?
Yes.
So, that'll get construed too.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, don't you love out of context clips?
I enjoy it.
Here's the thing. If people are out there misconstruing it, they don't get it, they don't get it. And actually, I want to touch on that later, of what makes, because I used to get fixated on why people get so outraged by me just saying that there's another path. And I think I've finally figured out why. And we've kind of talked about this morning. We'll touch on it later. Anyway, the way that this conversation happened with this friend is that I'm happy they found their path, very happy that they've realized that it actually is more in corporate America and they feel really thriving there. The only problem was the way that they brought it up was that like they're doing a real job now, and the thing that I'm doing is not a real job. Yes. And this isn't the first time that's happened. Yes. But it was more surprising, I guess, that it came from a friend, and two after being in that field, that she still had that stigma around it. And I'm not even blaming this person, because, like, they're very open to hearing my perspective, and
it was just an interesting way to look at it.
It was just, it kind of was jarring at first, because I couldn't, I guess, believe that the stigma still exists, that creative fields are still looked at as not real jobs, that the only way that it's considered real is if it's this traditional pathway. And I would think that in 2022, when we have the internet and there's so many opportunities for creative people, and creative outlets have very much become like a real high paying jobs. I know people that make 6 figures selling their stuff on Etsy. Artists are finding a way to thrive because there's so many more doors of opportunity that have opened because of the internet. The internet is a double-edged sword, and there's a lot of, like, terrible stuff that has happened because of it, but there's also all these opportunities, which is really awesome. And I felt bad that there was still this stigma being promoted that I've heard since I was a kid.
Same.
That if I was going to be an artist, I was going to be poor the rest of my life. Yeah. It's not real.
It's a pipe dream.
Eventually, but, like, what do you really want to be when you grow up?
Grow up.
Because it can't be art. It can't be anything creative.
It always goes back to grow up.
And then, this person was like, okay, but you get to do a fun job. And I was like, but if it's so fun, why are you leaving? If it's so fun, why? If you've been given this opportunity and it's so much fun, why are you leaving? And this person was like, well, I guess it is hard in a different way. It's more emotionally taxing, but this new job is hard because I'm going to be spending so much more time doing it. And I was like, so you don't think creatives spend 40 hours a week doing?
Bro,
I would almost argue they do double that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they were like, well, but you don't have to answer to a boss. I'm like,
that's not true either. First of all, your customers are your boss.
Yes.
Second, that's such that just, you don't understand, like, some of the fundamentals of business, actually, like of having a customer driven business.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you understand, like, a corporate side of it, where, like, you're working somewhere and they already provide you the customers, so you don't have to fucking sweat it. But that is such a misnomer. I mean, I'm only saying that because my father owned a business when I was growing up, and, like, dude, like customers is, like, literally your lifeblood. Like, that's what yes. your business is. So
there's this thing with art. You hear about tortured artists, and this happens all the time with YouTubers and pretty much any creative field that I've ever talked to anyone in. Once they become a professional in that creative field, there's this tortured artist thing where this art that I do sells, but it doesn't feed my soul.
Happens to everybody.
This art feeds my soul, but it doesn't sell. So then there's this tug of war balance that you have to find between creating work that feeds your soul, but also creating the work that you need to make the customer happy so that you survive off of it.
Absolutely. Not everyone gets to go make indies, dude.
Yeah.
You gotta,
So there is this like turmoil that every creative, goes through when it's like art and business.
Of course.
And to just be kind of blatantly told like everything you do is made up and silly and fun and then this thing I'm doing over here is real.
It's just a lack of understanding.
Yeah, but I think that if this is just a little sample size of it, I think there's a broader belief in that.
Yeah.
And
because what they're doing isn't not real.
No.
The same way that what we're doing isn't not real. So like there's a mutual respect that should be had instead of like going, well, that's all silly stuff. And that's probably derived from an insecurity that's attached to it through fear.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, I probably shouldn't be successful at this because it seems too fun. It can't last.
Yeah, the sustainability factor.
Right.
Like people always come back to that. Well, what about security? But like jobs aren't secure. Like look at the pandemic we just went through.
Yes.
I mean, it's
essential workers. Hello. Like
it's an
being
illusion.
classified by government officials. So like, what is an essential worker? Even me and Nikki got called essential workers because we do a podcast.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Like we were allowed to group up to do podcasting.
So,
yeah.
Everyone can chill out on that.
I just think that there's this mass illusion that's been slowly breaking, which is nice, but that we don't live in a world where this is guaranteed anymore. Where you don't get guaranteed health insurance. You don't get guaranteed pension. You don't get this isn't what it was in the 80s,
No.
and
you think Social Security is going to last? Like, good luck, bro.
And anything that's new and innovative can be at one time be seen as something not real and silly.
Look at the internet. The internet was called a fad. In fact, one of the most popular quote unquote economists, his name's Paul Krugman, called the internet, the World Wide Web, a fad and had no future in business or reality in the 90s. And like he is still acclaimed in like all kinds of like they give him awards, all kinds of shit. That is probably the dumbest call that has ever been called, like ever.
Yeah.
But nobody even talks about that anymore. It's just funny how you can be an expert in a field, swing and a miss so hard. And by the way, you will do that. That is a real thing.
Yeah.
That will definitely happen. But the people don't view you any differently. They still go, well, he's still that expert guy, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you have all the credentials.
Oh, that's it.
If you have enough credentials, like
you're good.
So those aren't made up.
If you're not sitting there like talking about what you learned from your mistakes,
yeah,
like I think that you're fucking up already.
Totally. But here's the other thing is that the more solidified that people think they know things, like how the world operates, the less you're learning anyway. You're not open to learning because you already know.
Yeah,
you can't learn anything if you already know everything.
And I have a degree in it and I already know.
And so when you make mistakes, you go,
so far.
well, I'm an expert, so I, that was an error on judgment, but I already know how to do blah, blah, blah. Which leads me to my next point, which is that I believe, and I'm just seeing through the course of my life and trying this so many times of like answering the call and being like, sure, I'll be the dummy, I'll be the fool in the tarot card deck that like takes a leap and doesn't know where it's going. Just other than that, I think this is the direction I'm supposed to go and see what happens. I like the experiments, like especially like the adventure experiments where I don't feel like I have a lot to lose.
You're very good at that.
Yeah. Well, I have so many hobbies. Like I love learning new shit. I love like seeing like how to do things, and I thrive off of like that whole process. Even the failing part, like the failing and being like, what did I do wrong? Okay, let me figure this out, and solving those things. But what I've realized through doing that, and also coming across the works of Neville Goddard and even like Jerry and Esther Hicks and you can Google it.
But the significance of them is
and a lot of spiritually enlightened teachers teach about how that you can literally create your reality, and a lot of people don't like to hear that because it means that the reality they're in right now, if they don't like it, then they have some responsibility in creating it, and so people are very turned off to that, and especially since we've been conditioned to believe that that we don't believe something until we see it, when it actually operates the other way around. And this is through all spiritual teachings, and like all kinds of works have been done on this, where our brain is so powerful actually that our beliefs create our thoughts, and our thoughts actively create our reality, as if we're living in a simulation and it's rendering it in real time.
Well, I don't know what you know. Speaking of rendering, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you know about special effects, but one of the most fascinating things about the entire industry, which I find very fascinating, is the way that artists are the visionaries who almost like plant the flag in an unknown place and say, I want us to go here. And then these visual effects artists are like, okay, how do we get there? And then they practically try to actually figure out how to do it. In the same way that like we have a fucking space program, because people like there was, I mean, dude, there's so much about like going to the moon, but like there was a very famous movie, like very old movie about like this guy who fires like a bullet at the moon, and then like you can see the moon's like a guy's face, and like he gets hit with the bullet.
Oh,
and
I've seen a cartoon like that.
Yeah, it's a very famous old movie, right? But like that was like the vision of like, we're going to go to the moon, we'll get there somehow. Yeah. You know, and that was like, that's what I wish more people, instead of seeing artists as silly and like they're young and they need to grow up, but I wish, and there is some of that, of course, in everything. Like you have to mature as an artist always, but I wish that people saw them more as the pioneers and visionaries in that way, where it's like they're creating a world like Asimov, right? Or like any of these great science fiction writers imagine these whole worlds, and now audiences are obsessed with them. Yeah. You know, like we're like, how many space operas, like Star Wars.
Some of the only relics that we have from ancient histories are the art that's left. Like
absolutely.
That's some of the only stuff that we have.
So you got
left.
L. Ron Hubbard, you got Asimov, you got all these guys out there calling shots, and then you have artists today still rendering their worlds because they found them so inspirational, and so they're bending our technology towards like actually visualizing and exploring those spaces. I mean, look at Tolkien. Tolkien was like, hey, there's like this old place, and like it's like Mordor, and like there's like all these little dwarves and hobbits, and that's like the entire fantasy genre is because that guy called his shot, and now everyone's trying to render and create and like, experience and like go there, and like, but it's about giving humanity goals and then seeing what we do with them. And I just think that artists have such an important place, but again, it gets beaten to death with the grow up.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to realize it because of that too. Even I, like in a creative field, maybe being like, what am I doing? I'm not even contributing to society, blah, blah. Because you do get wrapped up and you're like, what is the whole point of this?
I'm going to be a starving artist.
Yeah. Well, we have to go on a break.
Yes.
But when we come back, I'm going to come right back to this topic because there's a lot more to say.
We could do fucking 3 of these episodes in a row.
Honestly, we just love talking about this shit. Especially when people bring stuff up and I'm like, oh, wait, you think that? That's weird because I don't think that.
Yeah.
And we have a discussion
really
about
great.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Buy whatever we tell you to buy.
Thank you.
And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp.
Hey, Nikki, what is your most prized possession?
Franklin.
Well, do you think that it's best to take care of Franklin just by leaving him out in the rain?
No, I would never.
Well, yeah, you should probably be taking care of him.
Yeah.
And that's what you should probably be doing with your brain as well. And that's why BetterHelp is the move for you. Look, we spend a heck of a lot of time loving on certain things, but not necessarily loving on ourselves. And I think that should change.
Well, are you talking about therapy?
Absolutely, I'm talking about therapy.
Well, therapy is expensive.
Well, it's not always expensive, and it shouldn't be. And that's what BetterHelp helps to do, right? So, you can get licensed therapists, not just in your phone, but in your messaging. Yeah. You could go to them. You could do video conferencing. If you didn't match with the therapist, you could request a change, which is less awkward than somebody you met in person. Yeah. Right? And you have to like, oh, I don't really like you. I'm asking your office if I can change. Yeah.
It's really awkward. And it's like, got to go through the process all over again with getting to know a new person. It's super easy to switch with BetterHelp. I actually use BetterHelp and I didn't really connect with the first therapist that I met up with, but it was super, super easy to just switch therapists, and I totally connected to the second one. And I had quite a few sessions with her. And at first, because I was used to traditional therapy, I was like, wow, that's like going to be a huge bill. But it wasn't. It was like the cost of monthly is the same as 1 hour of traditional therapy, basically.
Wow.
So it was super affordable and super quick access. Like if I was having an anxiety attack throughout the week, like before our appointment, I could just text her and she could walk me through what I was feeling and kind of give me some tools to get through it on my own before we met up for our actual appointment. So that was really, really cool. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat only therapy sessions. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to, if you don't feel like your face is looking good.
And it's much more affordable than in-person therapy.
Yeah, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours in whatever category you need help with. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Steve.
That's better, HELP.com/Steve.
STEVE.
And that's the way to get the help, is to use the Steve code.
Okay, we're back. And I hope you bought whatever we told you to buy because we're starving artists. So
thank you. Oh my God, we need this to work.
Gosh. It's funny when you talk about like people saying artists are silly and make believe when like humans were put on the earth without any manual, and like we're literally operating by a bunch of rules that people made up. Like people made up laws. People made up like the little like what like the numbers of laws and like what number law thing is, and then they made up a profession that only people in that profession know the code of law.
There weren't robots like in the early 1900s, but there were depictions of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Through artists. Yeah. So like, let's all chill a little bit. There were also depictions of like small computers.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like Star Trek.
Yeah.
They had tricorders and like, Star Wars. They got like little tiny computers compared to like the computers that we had at the time, which were fucking the size of a room.
Yeah.
So like, like you can say what you want, but artists who are like projecting or projecting, I think is fair, but a future where this is possible bends people who are living in reality to try to strive for those goals. Like, I wonder if I could build that or make that.
What it does is it changes, it opens your beliefs into what's possible, right?
Oh yeah.
And so,
how about a rocket that can land itself? Like what Elon's doing. You can literally launch it into space. It will come back into Earth and it will land. And you can recover the object that landed itself, didn't destroy itself like we used to do. Like it used to be like you want to launch, you have to leave something behind, it gets destroyed in the process.
Yeah.
Now it can land itself. Like stuff like that is only brought about through imagination.
Yes.
And artists are the fuel for imagination.
Yeah. Well, what happens is when the artist suggests something, it's like, haha, that's silly, that's science fiction. Going to the moon is science fiction, blah, blah, blah. But then it opens people's mind up to like, well, what if we did go to the moon? And then you start playing without them knowing it.
Yeah.
They opened up an imagination in the person receiving this idea, instead of like the person receiving is like, that's silly, but what if that were possible? And they start to like go into that realm. And when you get enough people that believe that, that's when you can hit a tipping point where it does start to form into a reality.
Absolutely.
Because enough people believe that maybe that is possible, and then the actions happen because the thoughts come like, well, how can we make it possible? And then the actions happen, and then, oh my God, it is possible, until it's widely accepted because now it's a new reality. Like, and then the people that are just reacting to the current reality are like, well, of course it's possible. So I see it right now in front of me.
Yeah.
I see it.
But those are the people that are in the comment section going like, you can never do that. You might as well just fucking die. You'll never be able to make that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude, cool.
So I think that, and I don't want to even blame them, because I think that we're actually conditioned to only believe what we see in front of you. Like, if you don't see it, then don't believe it. If you haven't seen it with your own eyes, someone could be lying to you.
Yeah.
Don't get scanned. People are more afraid of
seeming silly
yes. than they are of taking a risk. That's what I've noticed. The number one inhibitor of people following like that spark, that that thing, that unknown, is that they don't want to look silly to their friends and family and their peers, and be discredited in their circles.
There's a very famous now publication from like the early 1900s, and it was like the same year that the Wright brothers flew. And it was some guy who was, or like a journalist at the time, who was saying, man will never fly. Like we are not meant to. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that, by the way, it's perhaps like the most remarkable thing that happened to that entire generation, right? That man eventually flew and like they were able to experience it. And now when we get on an airplane, it's so routine to us that we close the screen.
And we complain about it.
And we bitch about it the whole time. But like, think about how amazing it is for our generation and for really the last century of humanity that we can get on a plane and we're 30,000 feet in like 15 minutes and we're bored.
Do you know back in the day when commercial air travel first was happening that people used to dress up for it? It was it was an event.
It's so sick.
It was like, oh my, this is an event.
Yeah.
You know, airline stewardess were like models, like pilots were like these heroes. It was like crazy. Yep. And you dressed up to go on the airplane because it was like crazy.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I love it.
I think that's so funny. And now we just get in there on our sweats and we're like, this security line's so long. Made me take off my shoes.
It's honestly so wild. Like the perspectives are so funny on all of it, and that's all it is to me. Is funny.
It's silly, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to zoom out and see the silliness of it, and I think
it's healthy.
The more that I've gone down these roads of being like, well, what happens if we do that? The sillier things are, and the more I'm like, we talked about like if our life was a sitcom, I would call it unrealistic writing.
Oh yeah,
because of all the silliness that happens on the daily.
People used to think that I overused the term sitcom wife, and then they all saw you win the World Series of Poker, 4th place. And they're like, yo, I think Steve's onto something. I've actually never seen more of a reaction to one thought that I put out there years ago.
Yeah.
Of like, I swear to God, my life's a sitcom. And then people are like, yeah, okay, Steve Green thinks his life's so fucking funny. Like, blah, 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 blah. And like, no, now maybe you guys can understand what the fuck's going on in my house.
And that came from answering a call too. Like,
but 4 months prior to that, you never played a tournament your whole life.
That's true.
And then all of a sudden, Nikki's like 4th place, and my neighbor, who's like a fucking poker legend named Chris Mormon, he's like, Steve, this is a big deal. We got to go. And I'm like, I didn't even know this is that big a deal. Holy shit, I guess we got to go.
Yeah.
But like that's the sitcom of my life. I don't even know what a big deal this is. And then not to take away from what you did, obviously it is a big deal, but it's just so fucking surreal. Plugging all that in together and seeing what actually came of it.
You know what's so funny during that journey is that in that very tournament, the first table I got sat at, it was me and this other girl were at a table. We were the 2 girls at the table, and the show Queen's Gambit got brought up. You know, it's about this girl that learns how to play chess when she's like an orphan.
Yes.
And she's on these, some drugs, and she like sees the chess pieces move on the ceiling, and like she becomes this like crazy like idiot savant at chess basically, and she's really stylish while she does it, and she's very attractive, and she goes through this whole like thing where she goes from being an orphan playing her first chess game to like schooling everybody at chess and at the college level, and then just like wins championships. And me and this girl were talking about it, and this guy next to us was like, I'm actually a chess tournament player, and I liked that show a lot, but they didn't portray chess tournaments correctly. And I was like, oh, we were talking about how they don't portray poker tournaments very correctly either. Like a lot of media. Like poker movies are like just very exaggerated. The hands are just silly. And he asked us if we liked the show, and both me and the girl were like, yeah, and she's like, but there was something I like off about it, and I was like, it was too easy for the character, right? And she was like, yes, that's it. It seemed like there was basically no obstacles for this character, that she went, and then she had this like quick little obstacle like where she kind of got too far into drugs, and like she lost like 2 tournaments, and then she like stopped doing drugs and like went back up and like won everything. And we were like, yeah, like it just seemed kind of like too easy. Like the arc just went from like winning to slightly losing to like rapidly winning again. And then I final tabled that tournament at the World Series. I
know, it's so funny.
And I was like, maybe that writing wasn't that unrealistic, but it was based on my version of reality.
Yeah, but also too, something that will get missed in that is the work that you actually put in was wild. Like, look, like I said, like when my buddies like David So are texting me and stuff, and they're like, bro, who the fuck is your wife? that shit makes me laugh more because I know you so well that none of what you did surprised me. And again, not to take away from what you did, I just saw the work you put in.
Yeah.
So like, but like it will, I could say that as much as I want, but anyone could just look at a calendar and go, okay, but 4 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. This bitch is up every fucking morning. She's doing it all motherfucking day.
And it went exactly like Queen's Gambit, though, where, like, I mean, because they cut out a lot of the work she did. She did study a lot, and she put in a lot of time. She failed a lot with the original teacher, okay, when she was a kid, when she was like an orphan. She was like 6 years old. She failed a lot, but then she got really good. But like she slowly started winning these tournaments, like kind of right off the bat. And that's kind of what happened with me was I put a lot of work into it. But even putting a lot of work, people were like, well,
but
that's
there's no
still
but.
statistically like.
There's no but though.
I think the one but was that I just like this calling, this like faith belief in that this is kind of what I'm just supposed to be doing.
Yes, you knew.
And like there was like a thing
you were pulled.
That was like, but what if this did happen?
Yes.
What if that happened?
And something else I have to say that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Because me and Nikki refused to take life that seriously.
Yeah.
This became something that we were both rooting for in our home. Like where it's like, imagine you just know Nikki Limo and you're like, yeah, okay, she's the Tasty Tuesday lady on YouTube. And like, you know, she's been on JK and like, you know, she's
wherever
got big mood
people
and whatever.
Know me from.
Yeah. And like she's had a a pretty decent career for herself on the tubes. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, Nikki Limo is a poker fucking champion at the World Series of Poker, which is like the fucking Super Bowl of poker. Mm-hmm. And she final tabled and she got 4th place.
And I mean, yeah.
And she barely started. And nobody knows. But like nobody knows, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what you put into it. That's what I found so funny about that.
Yeah.
Is like being on the inside, it's different, but being on the outside, it's just like, wait, Nikki she just brought back Tasty Tuesday. Now she's in the World Series of Poker. What the fuck's going on?
And so I think that's actually, there's this other part where people, I think, get wrong about manifesting. I think manifesting gets a very woo-woo title because people will think that manifesting is like, oh yeah, so you like dream about like I want $1 million and then like you wake up and you have $1 million. Like that's manifesting, like that's real, bro. No, that's actually not how it works. What all these spiritual teachers have like kind of trying to impart is that you believe something in your mind and you really believe it and you feel the feelings of actually having that, right? And you until it feels very real to you that you have that thing. And then what happens is you start acting as if you have that thing and you start doing the actions that someone with that thing would do. And the actions are what actually creates you to actually having that thing. It's like a reverse engineering process.
It's like the fake it till you make it
It's not
shit.
you like sitting on a couch and then someone rings your doorbell and goes, $1 million, sir? Mm. It's like, no, you're picturing every detail of having it and why and how your life has changed. And then you walk around, you know, almost open to opportunities to make that a reality.
But you're still just a dumb artist. So let me give you an example actually from someone that people respect.
Yes.
In our culture.
Okay.
So Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank fame.
Okay. Yes.
Famous Barbara, who literally I've never seen her bet on a deal. She's always like, I'm out. But people respect and love Barbara, right? She's I guess a billionaire or like near it. She's like multi-hundred millionaire, I guess, right? So she actually talked about how there was this. So she was working in New York, and she had not, she was not doing what she wanted to do yet. She had taken a job delivering packages, and one day she was taking a package to this New York apartment, and it was fucking beautiful, right? It was like on the edge of Central Park, and it had its own greenhouse. So like, you're in a house, right? But then it like a whole side of it's like a glass bubble, and it looks out into Central Park, and like it's fucking beautiful, right?
Right.
And so she's delivering this package to this woman there, and like this old lady like is like, "Thank you," and she's like, "This is a weird thing that I'm gonna say, but if you ever want to sell your house or your apartment, can you please contact me first?" And the lady kind of chuckled, but she took her information or whatever. And then, Barbara ended up working her way up in business in New York. Like she was just a package courier there. Yeah. Then. So, like a decade plus goes by, And sure enough, this woman contacts her and she's like, yeah, I want to sell it. And Barbara's able to buy it for like 10 milli. But like,
but at the time,
right? But she's standing there she's standing there and she's just saying, you know why? She's like, it was just the weirdest thing. She's like, I just visualized myself there all the time.
Yeah.
Like I just put myself there all the time. Saw myself living there, and here I am. I'm fucking living here.
And there's so many stories like that.
So much of that. But like, that's a practical, like not creative brain person per se, like in the cookie cutter sense. And they're doing some woo woo ass shit fucking randomly, but like it worked out pretty well.
There's
and,
a lot of
crossover
people
with that.
in like, if you read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about this, and he interviewed like the billionaires at that time, like the richest people in the world at that time. This was written in like the 1950s or 40s or something like that. But he basically like wanted to see if there was some sort of like consistent factor in these people's ability to be rich. And while they had vastly different approaches to becoming wealthy and like completely different mindsets, the one thing that like connected them all was like they all had this belief and they all like visualized themselves succeeding. Like there were certain fundamentals that they all had in common, and he wrote down like what they were, and that's what the book is like the things that they all did that were consistent amongst all of them.
Yeah. And there you go. So there's like successful ass people that aren't selling fucking art online, like the meme would be.
Yeah.
And they do it too. So
and then there's people that it's like, okay, well, if it's so easy to just visualize $1 million and you get $1 million, then why isn't everyone doing it? Because number one, not everyone wants $1 million. Like me thinking about having $1 million, it's more about like, well, how would that change my lifestyle? I would actually need a really strong reason to like want that I would put the $1 million for, and this is how it would change my life, and I'd visualize more of like what that would do for me rather than the actual physical $1 million. And number
100%.
two, most people don't believe they can actually attain $1 million. So you can say all you want to yourself, like, I'm a millionaire, I heard these affirmations work. And if you don't actually believe it, and you don't actually feel it in your bones that you have that or could have that, then it just isn't. That wouldn't happen for you.
Believe it or not, it just opens you up to more choices that you don't really realize are choices at the time.
Yeah.
So like if opportunity comes to you, you don't have an excuse for why you can't do it. You can actually figure out why you can do it.
Yeah, you're more open to these avenues.
Yeah, and honestly, I've never met anyone in my life, and I've met a lot of people in the creative field, but I've never met anyone in my life who found a way to constantly say no to things who made it. Never.
No.
Never.
So
the people who do that the most are the biggest washouts of all.
Yeah. It reminds me of that joke. I don't know if I heard this when I was a kid, but there's a guy, he falls off a boat. He's drowning in the middle of the ocean, and a lifeboat comes out to save him. And they're like, hey, here's a life raft or whatever, come on. And the guy's like, no, God will save me, don't worry.
Oh yeah.
And like another boat comes later, and they're like, hey, come here, like we'll save you. And he's like, no, God will save me, I'm good. And so he's drowning, and then like the helicopter comes and like drops a ladder down and is like, sir, this is your last chance at survival to like grab the ladder. And he's like, God will save me. And then the guy dies, and he goes to heaven, and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And God's like, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter
and a fucking ladder, dude.
Yeah. But the guy was just like, no, I'm like gonna manifest being saved instead of like literally
doing it.
You're getting sent opportunities to be saved because you're thinking about it.
But they're thinking about the golden opportunity. Like, I want someone to walk up to me and hand me $1 million or whatever, right? And the easiest path.
And the ideal version. Like, I know sometimes I've thought like, oh man, I'm failing at everything because it's not the picture that I had in my head of success.
Yeah.
You know, and it took my therapist at the time to be like, well, paint a picture of your life for if someone was to take your life, like if you were, if you're getting reincarnated and someone's going to describe like what your life's going to be like, describe it to me. And I'm like, okay, well, I live in like LA and she's like, well, describe the neighborhood. You really like the neighborhood? Like, yeah, it was a really pretty neighborhood. And at the time we were living in that apartment, and I was like, well, it's not like my dream house,
not the funeral home. But
no, not the funeral home, but it was a really pretty neighborhood, and a neighborhood I really like. And okay, what do you do for a living? Okay, well, I make content and like try to make people laugh. And So like so I work for myself, and like, well, who are you? Do you have a relationship? Like, yeah, I do I have a husband that like really loves me. Like, and you're painting this picture of your life, and it's like, now would you trade that for something else? And it's like, yeah, no, I guess I wouldn't. I just didn't really think of that. Wasn't my picture of where I thought I would be at that point in my life. So I labeled it a failure. And I was operating from this like place of like of lack, really, that like I didn't have everything that I thought I was going to have. And once she reworded it like that, and I started to just see all the things I was super grateful for, and like kind of like the progression of how far I've come. I'm not a waitress anymore. I'm not like lonely anymore. I'm with someone that loves me. I have a lot of love in my life. I have 2 cats I really love. Like
well,
two,
all
two,
the cats you'd have
stupid
later.
Kitties. Yeah. Well, once I started acting out of this like abundance,
I started to visualize more cats.
I had an abundance of cats later.
Whoa! Now all of a sudden 2 more cats.
I got a much bigger place within the span. I felt like I was hitting a wall with finding a house. I wanted to buy a house forever, and felt like a real estate.
Hitting a wall. You said we're going to die in our old place.
I said I'm going to die here.
You said we're going. No, you said we are going to die.
Yes.
Here.
Because I was not open. My wrist.
The most dramatic shit. Fucking this chick is hilarious. I'm telling you, man. If my life isn't a sitcom, whose is, bro? You want to hate on my fucking life being a sitcom? Good luck writing that shit. I wake up in it every fucking day. I see this chick. I wake up. I'm out in the hallway. Nikki's like, for some reason, bent all the way over on all fours, fucking breathing or whatever. My life is hilarious. And then she's like, I had to take in my moon rocks from last night. Oh, shit.
First of all, I was on
she's like, gets up all of a sudden and she pulls up her pants and she's like, oh, shit. I left all my moon rocks outside.
First of all, I was doing cat-cow poses and yoga.
Yeah, if you say so.
It's a very basic thing to do in LA, especially.
Yeah.
And then secondly, they weren't moon rocks. They were crystals that were charging under the full moon.
Thank you. Sorry.
There was lepidolite.
Point being, she forgot about them, and then she's like,
there was Amazonite.
Shit. And it's like the oh shit is like the oh shit that you have.
Rainbow obsidian out there.
If you're about to burn the fucking house down because you left the oven on. Like the oh shit is just so incredible.
Well, because
and I'm like, where's the studio audience? Can I at least walk in the room, get my applause for a second before you guys like lay this shit on my head?
If it sits in the sun too long, it could discolor them.
I know. Are you comfortable doing a part 2 of this, by the way?
Yeah.
I think we just should.
What else is there to talk? I mean,
I think
what
we
else?
just should.
But what else? I guess, okay.
No, we
here,
no,
submit
there's
questions.
so much more. There's actually like an entire second half of this that I want to talk about.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's do a part 2.
We were going to do
because
part 2.
I was actually going to touch on your shadow self and how a lot of people deny these aspects of themselves because they've been told that they're not societally acceptable. And shadow work is really confronting these parts of yourself that are blocking you from getting all the things that you want. So, yeah.
I think we should start with that.
Okay.
On this next upcoming
episode.
STTY episode.
So I hope you liked this episode. I know it might ruffle a few feathers because there are people who, if you're not happy with your current life situation, you kind of get mad that we've gotten, people saying that there's survivorship bias, and we've done a whole episode on survivorship bias too. You could go watch that if you want to see it.
Sure.
But I feel like some people needed to hear this aspect of truth, and I've been going down a path of just finding my pure truth to share with the world. And I have noticed lately that it has ruffled feathers, and I was like, well, why? And that's when the shadow work part came in. And so I'm sorry to those of you who did maybe got their feathers ruffled, and maybe you weren't ready to receive that message. But I think that this message was like for a lot of people that did need to hear it.
I agree, but also at the same time, always zoom out, always take things a little less seriously, because we live in a world now where you post a fucking tweet about how you won a fucking stuffed bear at a carnival, and everyone's kind of pissed about it, actually.
Yeah.
Because what about this going on right now?
There was a joke on Twitter where it's like, dude, Twitter, like, you post, I like pancakes, and you'll get 5 responses like, so you hate waffles?
Yeah, so really.
So you hate waffles?
So waffles is just like, go fuck them,
Why don't you like waffles?
Yeah.
Is it because you're too elite and you don't order waffles anymore?
Who made pancakes? Guess what? They raped people. It's like, oh shit, I don't fucking know. I like
You
pancakes.
support rape.
Yeah. So
Just say you support rape.
Just say you're down with that, and we'll move on.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god. And it's like, oh, thank God I didn't post I like pancakes with syrup. Because I was just reading about syrup, and I was like, "Oh God,
it's very
that would have been bad."
The way that they farm syrup, so many trees get slaughtered.
Exactly. See.
Okay, so anyway,
All right, we'll be back.
Hope you guys like this, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.